right now. Battleground New York City, the fight for your vote. Your front row seat to the battle for New York's next mayor. It's the old guard clinging to power, chasing a candidate they never saw coming. Every night, our experts break it down.
What New Yorkers want above all else is authenticity.
We're listening to the people who matter most, you, the voters. And when the candidates sit across from us, nothing's off the table. What's your plan to make New York City feel like a safer city?
S.E. Cup, that's your perception. Of course, there's a lot of crime.
So what's happening right now? Let's dive in. Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. It's Wednesday, October 15th, and we're just 20 days away from this all-important New York City mayoral race. Later in today's show, we're going to talk to a parent leader about her thoughts on the Gifted and Talented program that's become such a hot topic now in this race, and what the next mayor needs to do for education in New York City. But first, as always, let's get to some news. Joining me now is Craig McCarthy, City Hall Bureau Chief for the New York Post. Craig, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, so let's get to the news. Frontrunner Zohran Mamdani just did his first Fox News interview with Martha McCallum. How did it go? What were your takeaways?
First, he was pressed on, the ceasefire in Gaza, and that if he would be calling for Hamas to put down their arms. I think this is kind of this line he's tried to walk with his supporters of being very pro-Palestinian and not seemingly criticizing Hamas too much than just to denounce them as a terror group. And then also at the same time trying to have the both sides of, also kind of denouncing Israel. He walked the line pretty well. He was pressed repeatedly on, the economy, about businesses potentially leaving. And, we kind of pivoted to the same kind of his campaign stump speeches of trying to make everything more affordable for everybody here. He did fairly well under questioning. I think the takeaway from this is that he offered up his apology to the NYPD, which was kind of has been a bizarre back and forth for the last 5 weeks now.
Yes. That is interesting because he has been asked that before. I remember he was asked it on The View. He was asked it, I think, on Fox 5. And he said he would apologize personally to them, which was an odd response. So you're saying that in this interview, he actually did offer it up.
This started September 11th. The Times had published a story and saying, do you believe you should apologize for your past statements? And he said, yes. Oddly, he did not then just say sorry in the article, which led to weeks of reporters questioning of when will you say sorry? And then, as you're saying, he kind of almost seemingly made like he was going to shake every 34,000 officer's hand and apologize personally, which I would imagine would take a very long time. So maybe this just kind of moved things along. But yes, he apologized, but I would say like there wasn't much substance to it. I mean, he's been having these closed door conversations, but it was just, yes, I'm sorry. And I have to work with you. So it was kind of this, maybe these check boxes, right, of what are the last few little things that you're going to get pressed on in the last 20 days of the election that you just kind of need to get off the table and get through. And this is seemingly one of them I would imagine, would kind of kill that line of questioning the storyline going forward.
Okay, so if you were, this was obviously for a national audience. I don't think there are a lot of New York progressive Mamdani voters watching Fox News in the middle of the day. So for a national audience, if you don't know Zohran Mamdani, you've not been paying attention to this race, and you happen to see this interview, Craig, with Martha, and you're maybe like in Kansas or Texas, does he come off as scary as Trump and Republicans are painting him out to be?
Well, I think, the thing he was pressed on, I think this is a difference that happens in places like Middle America, places like Texas, or in Kansas, and places like even just Pennsylvania, like, Lehigh Valley County that flipped historically in 2015 for Trump over Hillary. Yep. I think like it's a different mindset in New York City of trying to have these, we refer to them as freebies when we're covering them, but, even just like 3K and all of these kind of things that entice people to stay into the cities. I think that it's not as much as it's it's scary when it comes to this, because I don't think the everyday person cares if JP Morgan moves from New York City to Texas. I think that
Right.
that's kind of something that we understand here is could have a massive effect on the economy here. And I think that like a lot of these things are kind of out of reach of the normal person in the national audience. I mean, I would argue that this was more of a plea towards the independents, and maybe there's 14% undecided in the city, and they do watch Fox News here. Like or at least those clips will get picked up. They will get picked up by the Post, which we've already
Right.
published 2 stories today. All of these other outlets will be this free media that he'll get from this. So I think it's less about the national and trying to make him more palatable and more towards, this is what's going on. I mean, could be also too, I mean, the president, it seems like Mamdani kind of lives rent-free in his mind here, where he brings them up constantly no matter what event he's at. So maybe this was a strategical situation that he could come in and have it, be for to try to make him more palatable when he at least have a piece with the name and stuff like that when it's brought up.
Interesting. And Mamdani also had some business to take care of yesterday in his capacity as an assembly member. He was at a Boys and Girls Club in Queens with New York Governor Kathy Hochul. It was their first appearance together since she endorsed him. Speaking of Trump, he came up.
I mean, this is obviously something that's going to be a continued storyline. I mean, Trump brought him up when he was in the White House yesterday, bringing up that he's this communist and he's not going to give any money to New York City. And, that's something that is, has come back and forth of, is it a better way to do something which for Kathy Hochul has done, is worked with the president back and forth and, hasn't seemingly lost a lot of these funding in comparison to places like Chicago or places like other places like California, where they've seen, funding cuts a little bit more steeply affect the budget.
And putting aside the fact that the president of the United States is saying he'll withhold money that isn't his, just because he doesn't like a candidate like Mamdani, do you imagine that kind of talk scares New Yorkers who know that they will be the ones who are punished if Trump withholds federal funding for New York and not Mamdani?
Well, I think that we should think about this and just take it even a step from that, is that our state and city are facing fiscal cliffs in the out years of our budget without any federal funding cuts. So I think we should realize that there's not going to be a bailout locally in case there's anything, if we can't write those budgets.
Yeah, that's something New York voters have to confront when the president is threatening the city and other liberal cities like he is. Craig, stay right there. I've got some more questions for you on the other side of this break. Battleground NYC. We'll be right back. And we're back with more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And joining me once again is Craig McCarthy, City Hall Bureau Chief for the New York Post. Craig, Andrew Cuomo is trying to make prostitution a real big issue in this race. He's specifically going after Mamdani's plan to decriminalize sex work. And he's saying that Mamdani's plan would bring New York City back to the bad old days of rampant crime, decreased public safety, and deteriorating quality of life. Is this an issue that resonates with voters, Craig?
I mean, I think so. I think people remember, maybe not everybody remembers what New York City like was, Times Square was like. I mean, I don't, but I've seen TV shows about it. But I think where
Yeah.
people are kind of looking at this is like the places like Roosevelt Avenue, where they see open sex workers operate now, and it's just quality of life and trying to make sure that this doesn't happen. The concern becomes is that there's less enforcement of this, is that people would come from outside the city and come in, and then that would just kind of lead to an increase in this. And, listen, the idea here behind it is to make sure you're not prosecuting these women who are, to safely do this job, if they're going to do it, to make sure they're not, there's no sex trades or anything like that, where there's an issue of human smuggling or anything.
Trafficking,
What comes with that too is making sure they're cracking down on this and doing those raids to get the people who are sex workers. They're making sure they're getting the people that are running those things, and the fear that it brings in organized crime if you open that up a little bit more. So it's kind of a result of that.
And yeah. When you decriminalize something, you can make that thing a magnet, right? That draws more and more of that. And for people who don't understand, maybe you've only been to New York City, the nice parts. Maybe you've only been to like the Manhattan tourist spots, but or like Williamsburg, right? But for people who don't know, you mentioned Roosevelt Avenue in Jackson Heights, Queens. That is like an open air brothel, basically. If you walk around, you just see it sort of happening. And I think if you're a young family living in the neighborhood, that's really kind of upsetting. And yeah, I think there was upwards of 400 arrests this year, just up to July, for criminal sex work, for prostitution. So it's a big problem. We're not just talking about like a prostitute on the corner here and there at night. We're talking about daylight, open air brothels, basically.
And it's also it's very complicated. Like it sounds like a very easy catchphrase to say, let's decriminalize this. But think about when we did it. We have a great case example, right? We decriminalized marijuana in the city. And the state then made it legal. But the problem is that there was no really good plan on how to decriminalize it on the city level, which then when everything became legal on the state level, there was so many illegal pot shops that had been opening up left, right, and center, leaving the people that were legally doing this, struggling to do the right thing here. And then it led to a whole nother, illegal market, third party market, black market here.
Yeah.
So I think
that's exactly. It is. Yeah, it is more complicated. Like a lot of the things Mamdani says he'll do, it's more complicated. And that would be true of anyone, right? It's just a big city. It's a big job. You can't just snap your fingers and make problems go away. Before I let you go, Craig, as you know, there's a big debate tomorrow night. I am so excited. I've got my calendar set. I'm going to be on this show right after. So you can watch the debate and then watch Battleground for reaction. But what are you hearing about the way the candidates are preparing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have Andrew Cuomo, who is, he kind of got a little boost of energy here after Eric Adams dropped out of the race, right? He jumped up into the 30s the first time he's cracked in there. He needs to make up ground. I mean, he needs to land some punches. And the question is he that kind of politician? We haven't seen him do those kind of things. And can he come across to these independent voters as somebody that could be that next leader that they actually embrace? Because he's never been this motivating person. He's kind of led with an iron fist when he was a governor and all these things. So it'll be interesting to see how he does that. And it'll be interesting to see if, accidentally Curtis Lewa and Andrew Cuomo do gang up on Mamdani, or it's just a slugfest all around, which I think if it's the latter, we're just going to see the polls stick exactly the same.
It's a good point. Because Andrew Cuomo has some work to do tomorrow night, as you say. But does he come off looking like a jerk, right? His reputation is as a bully. Is that going to be off-putting to voters? Or are they going to see him as, this guy's tough and he's, no nonsense? And we'll have to see. That's why I'm so excited. I always love debates. This is going to be a good one. And we'll talk to you, I'm sure, at some point after this debate, Craig, to get all of your reaction to and reporting. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and there'll be more Battleground NYC after the break. Welcome back to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. We've talked here about the sort of sleeper issue that education has been in this race. It's always an important issue, but it's really kind of taken a back seat to the broader issues of affordability and housing and public safety in this race. But when frontrunner Zohran Mamdani mentioned that he might phase out the city's gifted and talented program, well, it became a front and center issue. And he might have stepped on a bit of a hornet's nest. Earlier in the week, we had on someone who defended Mamdani's position on this. Well, now we're going to talk to Yiatin Chu. She's co-president of PLACE NYC, which stands for Parent Leaders for Accelerated Curriculum and Education, New York City. Yiatin, thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here, SC.
Okay, before we dive into the issue and I get all of your takes, just tell me more about the mission of PLACE NYC. Why'd you guys come about and what do you guys do?
Sure. We formed in September 2019, just weeks after de Blasio's School Diversity Advisory Group, which was the group that he convened to address segregation in schools in New York. They had recommended to eliminate gifted and talented programs. That was the headline in the New York Times in August of 2019. And many of us were already fighting the plan for de Blasio to end the SHSAT.
Mm-hmm.
So we were already kind of, involved in education advocacy. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways in which we thought we could address it was to fix the pipeline. And when news came about that he was going to end the pipeline, we were clearly very concerned. And that's been the mission, is to, maintain and increase the rigor of New York City public education, mm-hmm. and keep and expand the bright spots like gifted and talented programs.
So talk about this program, talk about accelerated programs. Why are they important to families in New York City public school systems?
Sure. Even within our own family, we'll see siblings that are just clearly more interested, a little more advanced in how quickly they learn things. Well, we have that in New York City families, right? We have usually somewhere between 50 to 60,000 families applying to kindergarten every year. And in there are kids that are already reading, mm-hmm. kids that are learning things at a faster rate, right. And parents who have those children want to find the most appropriate school setting for them. And, and those parents would be seeking out gifted and talented programs.
Right, to meet students where they are instead of holding students back to meet where the rest of the class is.
Exactly. And, of course, in New York City, we have children that come from non-English speaking mm-hmm. households, from, parents who do not have a college education. Mm-hmm. So where those students are when they arrive in kindergarten are going to be very, very different. Yeah. And certainly socioeconomic is going to play a big role in that. But we always believe that you have to meet them where they are and continue to challenge them, as opposed to bring everyone back because a child is just starting to learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s.
One of the criticisms that we hear about this program is that it's really for privileged families, a very small pocket of privileged families. Just anecdotally, personally, I know that's not the case. But respond to that kind of criticism.
Sure. I think, first of all, Asians are the largest makeup of gifted and talented program. I heard your other guest said white. He didn't even mention Asians, right. Which I thought was fascinating because they always kind of put the disparity between white and black. And in New York City, we know it's a lot more complicated
sure.
than that. So Asian students are actually the largest percentage. And, in terms of the critique that there are fewer number of Black and Hispanic students in these programs, sure, the data proves mm-hmm. it out. These programs do not exist in a lot of communities in the city. So if you think about elementary school, most parents would rather get their kid to somewhere local. And if they don't have a program that's easily accessible to them, it would be harder. And I think there's still a level of education that we need to do with parents about the availability of these programs. I mean, I'm surprised because I do this advocacy work, but I still continue to see the disparities of parents in the various school districts in New York City in terms of their knowledge, and they're raising their hand to say, hey, I want my child evaluated. So I think a lot of that comes from the geographic aspects of where these programs are, which Eric Adams actually have tried to address, and the knowledge of parents in different communities about the availability of these programs.
Yeah, right. And just, I think also a common misconception is that these are just for parents of means. And in fact, they're incredibly important for parents who don't have the means to send their kids to expensive camps and summer programs and extracurricular, science clubs and all of that, right?
It absolutely true. Look, the parents that are in the New York City public school system, which is, gift and talented programs are part of, they're not really privileged. The truly privileged ones that I
Go to
know
private.
in Manhattan, they're sending their kids to
Exactly.
private schools
Right.
that starts at $50,000 a
Yes.
year. So I think we need to dismiss the idea that these are for the privileged.
I think it's really good that you're making that point, because if you're outside of New York City and if you're outside of the New York City educational system, you really don't know what we're talking about. So stay right there. Yiatin, I've got more questions for you after the break. More Battleground NYC after this. And we're back with more Battleground NYC. One more time with Yiatin Chu, co-president of PLACE NYC. And Yiatin, I wonder if you think this is also an important way of keeping New York families in public school. Before the break, we talked about, the really privileged, they go to private school, they opt out of this whole system and this process. Is this a great way, making public schools sort of a place for all kinds of learners, so that they can stay and invest in public education?
Absolutely. I think when the centralized testing that started by Bloomberg, that was his goal. He wanted to keep middle class families in New York City for the benefit of really everybody, right? And we have seen families leaving New York City public schools. The kindergarten enrollment in New York City, kindergarten is really the legal entry for our K-12 programs here. We've seen it decline by 15 to 18% in the last 5-6 years. A lot of that drop, obviously, is, the pandemic and people making changes in their lives. But we definitely are seeing parents that are kind of fed up with what de Blasio was trying to do to our school system in the 2018-2019 period. And parents who can, like you said, will certainly have the option of seeking private schools. But there are parents that are in, what I consider pretty good school districts that start moving out. They move out to Long Island.
Right.
They've moved out to New Jersey. Some of it is to access just better schools. They move into these zones. But yes, I think keeping these programs are important to keep some of the middle class, but really just for the low income, the immigrant families who do not have a choice to move out.
Right.
to stay in New York City education.
And we're already hearing about this Mamdani effect, where some New Yorkers are preemptively moving to places like Westchester, just because they're afraid of some of his policies, maybe economic policies and other things, or maybe the impact he will have on public safety. Are you hearing anything about parents and families wanting to move if he becomes mayor over this educational issue?
Certainly. And I had a conversation with a parent of a 4-year-old on the Upper West Side. So, he has options, right?
Yeah.
But he very much believed in having his child be in public schools.
Right.
And he thought his daughter would be appropriate for Gifted and Talented. And hearing this news, he's really angry that Mamdani will come in, really not aware, I think, from everything I've read so far of Mamdani, he's kind of clueless about New York City public school education. I think he really needs to be schooled on what is truly happening on the ground and talking to parents, and not just talking to, academics and other policymakers who don't understand the complexity of the large school system in the country.
Did you see where he said he wanted to take more of the control over public schools away from the mayor and more on parents and teachers? The parents part sounds good. The teachers part sounds like teachers unions. Is that how you hear it too?
I hear it as well. And I have to say, even when de Blasio was mayor, I'm a fan of mayoral control. And the reason why is as much as I fear the fact that they can affect so many things, it does hold them accountable. Like having that accountability is really important, because when things don't go well, who are you going to look around? Like, if you don't have someone accountable, who's going to save us?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a big debate tomorrow night. Would you want a question on this put to the three candidates, Curtis Lewa, Andrew Cuomo, and Zohran Mamdani? And if so, how are you hoping someone addresses it and answers it?
Well, I think there's got to be a question on education.
Yes.
It's the largest agency. About 35% of our city budget is devoted to New York City schools. So I think it's irresponsible not to have that. What I'd like to hear is not just support for Gifted and Talented and specialized high school, but really, what is your plan for K-12 education? About half our kids are not reading or writing at grade level. It is atrocious, the state of New York City public schools. So I want to hear about that from them and how they're going to improve it for the parents, about 1 million parents that have students in New York City schools.
What's a thing that you think, other than Gifted and Talented, is really important to parents when it comes to school? Real quick.
I think safety within schools, because one of the things that came out in DOE's own survey of why parents are not enrolling their kids, or why parents left, it's the first time they did a survey like this. One was they could not find rigor in New York City education, which we talked about. And the second is they're concerned about their kids' safety.
Wow.
So safety within the school and safety getting to school for middle school and high school students.
All important stuff. Yiatin Chu, thanks so much for coming on, breaking all of this down. It's a really important issue that I know a lot of families are talking about, so we appreciate it. Okay, and more Battleground NYC tomorrow and every Monday through Friday. Reminder, tomorrow is debate night, and we'll be on after the debate at 11 o'clock.
NFC Beast. This is the only show tackling the topics that matter the most to the fan bases within the NFC East. And of course, we've got 4 esteemed panelists to break down all of the action in New York. It's Lou Albanese. This week in Dallas, we got Sam Gannon, and Breland Moore joins us from Philadelphia. Today, we're going to talk about that Commanders' crushing loss at home to the Bears. We'll get into Dallas showing no D in Carolina. But, of course, this conversation has to start with the New York Giants' absolute drubbing of the Philadelphia Eagles. Big G-men, they won that game by a final score of 34-17. Lou, this is the game that Giants fans have been waiting for years and years to come. Has New York proving to be a true threat in the NFC East.
Well, I don't know if they're a threat, but I'll tell you right now, the energy that Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo brings cannot be underestimated. Those two kids have elevated this